The phone call that shattered everything came at 11:47 on a Tuesday night. Mom was sobbing so hard I could barely understand her words through the static. "Marion, honey, you have to postpone the wedding. Jessica needs us right now. Her whole world is falling apart and Brad wants a divorce. Please, sweetheart, your sister comes first. Family always comes first." I stared at my reflection in the dark window wedding invitations scattered across my desk like broken promises. I set down my coffee mug with trembling hands, the ceramic clinking against the granite countertop in my downtown Chicago apartment. "Mom, slow down. What exactly happened between Jessica and Brad?" Her voice cracked through the speaker. "She made a mistake, Marion, a terrible, awful mistake. Brad found some messages on her phone from a coworker named Derek. They've been seeing each other for months." My stomach dropped. Jessica, my 29-year-old sister, had always been the golden child in our family. Perfect grades, perfect job as a marketing coordinator. Perfect husband in Brad, who worked as a pharmaceutical sales representative. Now this. "How bad is it?" I asked, though I dreaded the answer. "Brad moved out yesterday. He's staying at his brother's place in Naperville. He won't take her calls, won't respond to texts. Your father and I spent all day trying to reach him, but he's already contacted a divorce attorney. Marion, we need the family to come together right now. Jessica is completely devastated." I rubbed my temples, feeling a headache building. "Mom, Sarah, and I have been planning this wedding for 8 months. We've got 150 guests coming in 2 weeks. The venue is booked. The caterers are confirmed, the flowers are ordered." "I know, sweetheart, but think about your sister. She's been crying nonstop for 3 days. She hasn't eaten anything. She can barely get out of bed. We can't handle a wedding celebration when our family is falling apart." The unfairness of it all hit me like a freight train. Sarah Rodriguez and I had met 3 years ago when she was working as a pediatric nurse at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. I'd been there with a broken wrist from a softball game, and she'd been the one to comfort a scared kid in the next bed. Her compassion, her genuine warmth, her ability to find light in the darkest situations. That's what made me fall in love with her. "Where's Dad in all this?" I asked. Mom's tone shifted, becoming more serious. "Your father agrees with me, Marion. He said if you go ahead with the wedding while Jessica is suffering like this, he won't be contributing the $7,000 he promised for the reception." The financial threat felt like a punch to the gut. Sarah and I had been counting on that money. We'd already stretched our budget to the limit, trying to give our families a beautiful celebration. "I need to talk to Sarah about this," I said finally. "Of course, honey. But please remember, Jessica has always been there for you. When you were struggling in college, who helped you with your computer science projects? When you got laid off from your first job, who let you stay in her guest room for 2 months? Family takes care of family, Marion." After hanging up, I called Sarah immediately. She was finishing her shift at the hospital, and I could hear the exhaustion in her voice. "What's wrong?" she asked. "You sound terrible." I explained everything: Jessica's affair, Brad's decision to divorce, my parents' demand that we postpone our wedding. Sarah listened without interrupting, which was one of the things I loved about her. She never jumped to conclusions or reacted emotionally without hearing the full story. "So they want us to cancel everything?" she asked quietly. "Not cancel, postpone, until things settle down with Jessica." There was a long pause. "Marion, my parents already took time off work. My cousin Elena is flying in from Phoenix. My grandmother is coming from Puerto Rico. She's 83 years old, and this might be her last chance to see me get married." I know this is crazy." "It's more than crazy. It's selfish. Jessica made her own choices, and now she wants the entire family to revolve around fixing her mistakes." I wanted to defend Sarah's perspective, but before I could respond, my apartment buzzer rang. Through the intercom, I heard Jessica's voice, shaky and desperate. "Marion, it's me. I need to talk to you, please." 10 minutes later, Jessica stood in my living room looking like she hadn't slept in days. Her usually perfect blonde hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail, Her makeup was smeared, and she wore an oversized Northwestern University sweatshirt that I recognized as one of Brad's. "I know what Mom told you," she said, collapsing onto my leather couch. "I know she asked you to postpone the wedding. Jessica, what were you thinking? Brad is a good guy. He's been nothing but supportive of you for 4 years." She burst into fresh tears. "I never meant for this to happen. Derek and I just connected. You know, we started working late on this big campaign for a client in Milwaukee. We'd grab dinner after work, just as friends. But then, things got complicated." "Complicated how?" Jessica looked up at me with red-rimmed eyes. "I'm pregnant, Marion." The words hit me like a sledgehammer. "What?" "I found out yesterday morning, right after Brad left. I haven't told him yet because I don't know if it's his baby or Derek's." My knees nearly buckled. "Jessica, please tell me you're not asking me to give up my wedding because you got pregnant by your affair partner." "It might be Brad's baby," she insisted. "We were trying to have children. The timing is close. If the family can present a united front, if we can show Brad that we're all committed to working through this together, maybe he'll reconsider the divorce. Maybe he'll come back and we can raise this baby together." I stared at my sister, hardly recognizing the person in front of me. "Shin, you want me to sacrifice my wedding day, my future with Sarah, because you might be able to trick Brad into thinking your affair baby is his?" "Don't say it like that," Jessica snapped. "This is about family loyalty, Marion. This is about proving that when one of us is in trouble, the rest of us drop everything to help. Brad will see that and he'll remember why he fell in love with our family in the first place." The manipulation in her words was so blatant that I felt sick. But looking at my sister's tear-streaked face, seeing her desperation and panic, part of me still felt the old protective instinct that had been drilled into me since childhood. Jessica was the baby of the family, and I'd been taught to look out for her no matter what. "I need time to think about this," I said. Jessica stood up, reaching into her purse. "I brought something to help you decide." She handed me a sonogram photo. "That's your niece or nephew, Marion. This baby is going to need a stable family. It's going to need parents who are committed to each other. If you postpone the wedding and help me fix things with Brad, this child might have a chance at a normal life." The next evening, Sarah and I drove to my parents' house in the suburb of Arlington Heights for what Mom had called a family discussion. The moment we walked through the front door, I could feel the tension crackling in the air like electricity before a thunderstorm. Dad sat in his favorite recliner, his face grim and aged beyond his 58 years. Mom bustled around the kitchen, setting out coffee and store-bought cookies as if this were a normal family gathering instead of an intervention designed to derail my wedding. Jessica sat curled up on the sectional sofa, wrapped in a cream-colored throw blanket, playing the role of wounded victim to perfection. She'd clearly put effort into her appearance today. Just enough makeup to look pale and fragile hair, styled in a way that suggested she'd tried to pull herself together but was still struggling. "Sarah, honey, thank you for coming," Mom said, embracing my fiancé with what seemed like genuine warmth. "I know this situation is difficult for everyone." We all settled into the living room and Dad cleared his throat. "Marion, your mother and I have been talking about this non-stop since Tuesday. We think postponing the wedding is the right thing to do for the family." "For how long?" Sarah asked quietly. "Just until we can get Jessica's situation stabilized," Mom replied. "Maybe 3 or 4 months. Give her time to work things out with Brad. Let the emotions settle down." "My dress alterations are scheduled for next week," Sarah said. "The caterer requires final payment in 5 days. The church has been booked for this date for 6 months. Jessica spoke up from the couch, her voice weak and trembling. "Sarah, I wouldn't ask this of you if I had any other choice, but I'm scared about what I might do if my whole life falls apart. Sometimes I think about just ending everything." The room went silent. Mom gasped and rushed over to sit beside Jessica. "Sweetheart, don't talk like that. I can't sleep, I can't eat. I keep thinking about how I ruined everything, how I destroyed the best thing in my life. If Brad divorces me, if I lose my marriage and my home and have to raise this baby alone, I don't know how I'll survive." Sarah's expression hardened. "Jessica, threatening suicide to manipulate your brother into changing his wedding plans is not okay." "I'm not threatening anything." Jessica shot back, her victim facade slipping for just a moment. "I'm being honest about how desperate I feel. But I guess you wouldn't understand what it's like to lose everything because you've never made a real mistake in your life." "That's enough," I said firmly. "Sarah isn't the problem here." Dad leaned forward in his chair. "Son, I know this seems unfair, but think about what marriage means. It means putting family first even when it's inconvenient. If you can't make that sacrifice for your sister now, how can Sarah trust that you'll make the right choices when you two face hardships together?" The twisted logic of his argument made my head spin. Dad postponing my wedding doesn't prove anything about my character. It just proves that Jessica can manipulate the entire family into revolving around her crisis. "Your sister is pregnant and facing a divorce," Mom interjected. "This isn't manipulation. This is a cry for help." I pulled out my phone and showed them the bank statement I'd discovered earlier that day. "Mom, do you know Jessica borrowed $5,000 from the money you'd saved for my wedding?" The color drained from Mom's face. "What?" "I called the bank to discuss transferring your contribution to the wedding account. They told me about a withdrawal made last month using your savings account. Jessica's name was on the withdrawal slip." Everyone turned to look at Jessica, who had gone completely pale. "I can explain that." "Please do," Dad said, his voice dangerously quiet. "Derek and I went on a few weekend trips together. To Wisconsin, to Michigan. I needed to pay for hotels and restaurants. I was planning to pay Mom and Dad back before the wedding." "You used our parents' money to fund your affair?" I asked, incredulous. "It wasn't like that," Jessica protested. I was confused about my feelings. I thought if Derek and I spent some time together away from work, I could figure out if what we had was real or just a workplace crush. Sarah stood up abruptly. "I can't listen to any more of this." She turned to my parents. "Your daughter stole money, cheated on her husband, got pregnant by another man, and now wants to destroy Marion's wedding to cover up her mistakes. And you're supporting her." "Sarah, please," Mom said. "Try to have some compassion." "I have plenty of compassion," Sarah replied, "but I also have self-respect. Marion, I'll be in the car." After Sarah left the room, erupted into arguments. Jessica accused me of caring more about a party than my family. Mom said Sarah was being selfish and unsupportive. Dad threatened to disown me if I proceeded with the wedding while Jessica was having a breakdown. But what disturbed me most was the discovery I made while Jessica was in the bathroom. Her phone was sitting on the coffee table and a text message notification lit up the screen. I couldn't help but see the preview. "Derek, stop texting me. I told you I'm not ready to be a father. Handle this yourself." When Jessica returned, I confronted her. "Derek doesn't want anything to do with the baby, does he?" Jessica's composure cracked completely. "He said he never wanted children. He said if I keep the baby, he'll transfer to our company's Denver office and we'll never see each other again." "So your plan is to trick Brad into thinking he's the father?" "It's not tricking," Jessica shouted. "The baby could be Brad's. We don't know for sure. But you know it's probably Derek's." Jessica collapsed back onto the couch, sobbing. "I don't have any other options, Marion. If Brad divorces me and Derek abandons me, I'll have nothing. No husband, no support system, no way to provide for this child." Looking at my sister in that moment, I felt a mixture of pity and revulsion. She'd created this disaster through her own choices, and now she wanted the entire family to sacrifice our happiness to bail her out. "I need to think about this," I said finally. "There's nothing to think about," Dad said firmly. "Family comes first. End of discussion." The next morning, I was reviewing code specifications at my software development job when my desk phone rang. Our receptionist, Angela, sounded confused. "Marion, there's a gentleman here to see you. He says his name is Brad, and it's about a family emergency. My heart sank. I made my way to the lobby and found Brad sitting in one of the waiting chairs looking haggard and defeated. He'd lost weight in the past week, and his usually immaculate appearance was disheveled. "Brad, what are you doing here?" He stood up, clutching a manila envelope. "I need to show you something. It's about Jessica." We found an empty conference room, and Brad spread several documents across the table. Bank statements, loan applications, credit card bills, all bearing signatures that looked suspiciously like mine. "What is this?" I asked, studying the papers more closely. "Jessica forged your signature on loan documents using my credit," Brad said, his voice hollow. "She convinced loan officers that you were my brother-in-law and that I was co-signing for your business ventures. She emptied our savings account, $18,000, and destroyed my credit score in the process." I stared at the documents in disbelief. The signatures were good forgeries, but I could spot the differences. Jessica had always been artistic skilled at copying handwriting for school projects when we were kids. "How did you find this out?" "I went to the bank yesterday to close our joint accounts. The manager pulled up a credit report and asked me about several recent loans. I had no idea what he was talking about." Brad's hands shook as he pointed to one of the statements. "Look at this one. She took out a $12,000 personal loan claiming it was for your wedding expenses, but the money went into a separate account that only she could access." My head was spinning. "Brad, I never signed any of these documents. I never asked Jessica to take out loans on my behalf." "I know. That's why I'm here. I think your sister has been planning this for months. She knew our marriage was in trouble before the affair even started. She was setting up escape routes, building a financial cushion for herself." I examined more of the paperwork. There were charges at expensive restaurants in Milwaukee, hotel bookings in Wisconsin Dells, jewelry purchases at stores I'd never heard of. Jessica had been living a double life funded by stolen money. "There's something else," Brad said quietly. He pulled out his phone and showed me a series of text messages. I found these after she moved out. The messages were between Jessica and someone named Marcus discussing property investments and offshore accounts. The timestamps showed conversations going back 6 months long before the affair with Derek supposedly started. "Who's Marcus?" I asked. "I have no idea, but based on these messages, Jessica has been involved with multiple men while we were married. Derek might just be the latest one, or maybe he's the one she got careless with." I felt sick to my stomach. The sister I thought I knew was apparently a complete stranger, a manipulative criminal who'd been systematically destroying her husband's financial future while planning her exit strategy. "Brad, you need to file charges. This is identity theft, fraud, forgery. She could go to prison for this." He nodded sadly. "My attorney is preparing the paperwork. But Marion, there's more. I think she's been using your name for other things too. You might want to check your credit report immediately." After Brad left, I spent my lunch break on the phone with credit monitoring agencies. What I discovered made my blood run cold. Someone had opened 3 credit cards in my name over the past 4 months, running up a combined debt of nearly $15,000. There were also inquiries from payday loan companies and something called a business development loan that I'd never heard of. I called Sarah immediately. "We need to talk tonight. It's about Jessica, and it's much worse than we thought." That evening, Sarah listened in stunned silence as I explained everything Brad had shown me. When I finished, she was quiet for a long time. "Marion, your sister, is a criminal." "I know. And your parents want you to postpone our wedding to help her cover up her crimes." "They don't know about the financial stuff yet." Sarah shook her head. "It doesn't matter what they know. What matters is that they're asking you to sacrifice our future for someone who's been systematically destroying your life." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. "This is Derek. We need to talk. Meet me at the Starbucks on Clark Street tomorrow at noon. Come alone." I showed the message to Sarah and her face went white. "Marion, this feels dangerous. What if this is some kind of setup?" "Setup for what?" "I don't know, but nothing about this situation feels normal anymore." She was right, but I knew I had to hear what Derek had to say. Maybe he could provide more pieces to the puzzle of Jessica's deception. The next day, I arrived at the Starbucks 10 minutes early and spotted Derek immediately. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 25, with the nervous energy of someone who was in over his head. "You're Marion?" he asked as I approached his table. I nodded and sat down. "You wanted to talk." Derek glanced around the crowded coffee shop as if checking for surveillance. "Your sister is dangerous. I mean really dangerous. The affair thing is just the tip of the iceberg." "What do you mean?" "She's been running some kind of long-term con game, not just on Brad, but on multiple people. She told me she was divorced, said she needed help setting up business accounts for a consulting firm she was starting. I helped her open bank accounts using my employment verification from the marketing company." My stomach dropped. "What kind of accounts?" "Business checking, savings, even a line of credit. She said she needed them to look legitimate when meeting with potential investors. I thought I was helping someone start a company. But she was really using them to launder the money she stole from Brad." Derek nodded miserably. "I only figured it out last week when she started pressuring me to sign more documents. She wanted me to co-sign for a lease on office space. Downtown said we could work together and build something real. That's when you ended things. That's when I realized I'd been played. She never cared about me, Marion. She was using me to set up a financial infrastructure for whatever scheme she's running." Derek reached into his jacket and pulled out a flash drive. I copied everything before I told her I was done. Bank account numbers, email exchanges, documents she had me sign. I thought about going to the police, but honestly, I'm scared she'll find a way to pin everything on me. I took the flash drive, feeling its weight in my palm like a loaded weapon. "Derek, she's pregnant. She claims it might be Brad's baby." Derek's face went ashen. "It's not Brad's baby." "How can you be sure?" "Because Jessica told me she's been on birth control the entire time she was married. She said Brad didn't know because she wasn't ready for children yet. The pregnancy happened after she started taking fertility drugs last month." The revelation hit me like a physical blow. She planned to get pregnant. She planned everything. The pregnancy, the affair discovery, the family crisis, all of it. She told me her brother was getting married soon and she was going to need the family's full attention and support during her difficult time. I stared at Derek in horror. She planned to ruin my wedding. "Marion, I think she's been planning to ruin your life for a long time. She showed me files on her computer with information about you, your job, your salary, your credit history, even details about Sarah's family. She knows everything about your wedding plans, your finances, your future goals." "Why would she want to destroy my life?" Derek shrugged helplessly. "I don't know. But she talked about you a lot always with this weird resentment. She said you'd always been the favorite child, that your parents gave you opportunities they never gave her. She said it was time for the tables to turn." As I left the coffee shop with Derek's evidence, my phone rang. It was Mom, and she sounded frantic. "Marion, honey, where are you?" "Jessica is missing. She didn't come home last night and she's not answering her phone. We're terrified something's happened to her." But as I thought about everything Derek had just told me, I realized Jessica wasn't missing. She was probably somewhere making her next move in whatever game she was playing with all our lives. I drove straight to Brad's temporary apartment in Naperville, my mind racing with the implications of Derek's revelations. Brad answered the door looking exhausted, wearing yesterday's clothes and holding a cup of coffee that had clearly gone cold hours ago. "Marion, what's wrong now? We need to work together to stop Jessica before she destroys both our lives completely." I spread Derek's evidence across Brad's kitchen table alongside the financial documents he'd shown me earlier. Together we began piecing together the scope of Jessica's fraud scheme, and the picture that emerged was terrifying in its complexity. "Look at this," Brad said, pointing to a series of bank transfers on one of Derek's printouts. "She's been moving money through multiple accounts, creating a paper trail that makes it look like legitimate business transactions." I pulled up my laptop and started cross-referencing the account numbers with the forged loan documents bearing my signature. She opened these accounts using Derek's employment verification, then used the accounts to process the money she stole using my identity and your credit. But why? Brad asked. If she wanted to leave me, why not just ask for a divorce? Why create this elaborate criminal conspiracy? Because a divorce would mean splitting assets 50-50. This way, she gets to keep everything she stole, plus she can claim to be the victim of your abandonment when she's left pregnant and alone. Brad's phone buzzed with a text message. He looked at it and his face went pale. It's Jessica. She wants to meet with me tonight to discuss reconciliation. Don't do it. It's probably another manipulation. But what if she's genuinely remorseful? What if she wants to confess everything and make things right? Before I could answer, my own phone rang. Derek's number appeared on the screen. Marion, you need to know something else. Jessica contacted me this morning. She's offering to pay me $50,000 to disappear permanently. $50,000. Where would she get that kind of money? She says she has access to family emergency funds and wedding money. She wants me to leave Chicago, change my name, and never contact anyone from her life again. My blood ran cold. She's trying to eliminate witnesses. There's more. She said if I don't take the deal, she'll tell the police that I forced her to set up those bank accounts, that I threatened to hurt her family if she didn't help me commit fraud. She's planning to frame you, and probably you too. Marion, she has copies of all the documents I helped her create. She could easily claim that you were the mastermind behind the whole scheme, that she was just following your instructions to help her brother start a business. After Derek hung up, I shared the conversation with Brad. We sat in stunned silence for several minutes, trying to process the depth of Jessica's betrayal. She's been planning this for months, Brad said finally. Maybe even before we got married. I keep thinking back to all the times she asked me detailed questions about my job, my credit, my family's financial situation. I thought she was just interested in my life, but she was gathering intelligence. We have to go to the police, I said. With what evidence? Everything we have is circumstantial. She could claim she was coerced, manipulated, or threatened. Meanwhile, our names are all over fraudulent documents. Brad was right. Jessica had constructed her scheme carefully, making sure that if it collapsed, other people would take the fall. There might be another way, I said slowly. What if we force her to expose herself? How? She thinks she's in control of this situation. She thinks she can manipulate us individually and keep us from comparing notes. But what if we coordinated our responses? What if we made her think her plan was working while we gathered real evidence of her criminal intent? Brad considered this. You mean like a sting operation? Exactly. Derek said she wants to pay him to disappear. What if he agrees to meet with her, but we record the conversation, if she offers him money to lie to the police or leave the state that's witness tampering and obstruction of justice? And if she tries to pin the blame on you or me, we'll have proof that she's the one orchestrating everything. We spent the next 2 hours developing our plan. Derek would agree to meet with Jessica and wear a recording device. Brad would pretend to be open to reconciliation while documenting any attempts she made to manipulate him. I would continue acting like the torn brother, unsure whether to postpone my wedding while secretly gathering evidence. That evening, Derek called Jessica and agreed to meet her at a restaurant in Oak Brook. Brad and I positioned ourselves in the parking lot with a high-quality audio recorder that could pick up conversations through windows. Jessica arrived 20 minutes late, looking composed and confident for the first time in weeks. She'd styled her hair, applied makeup carefully, and wore a black dress that emphasized her pregnancy. Even from a distance, I could see that she was playing a role, the sophisticated businesswoman closing a deal. Through Derek's hidden microphone, we heard the entire conversation. I appreciate you being reasonable about this. Derek, Jessica said once they were seated. This situation has been painful for everyone involved. You said you had a solution, Derek replied nervously. I do. I have access to some family money, funds that were set aside for emergencies and special occasions. I can offer you $60,000 to relocate somewhere far from Chicago. California maybe, or Texas. somewhere you can start fresh without any connections to this situation. And in exchange, you forget you ever knew me. If anyone asks, police, lawyers, investigators, you never met Jessica Martinez. You never helped me with any business accounts. You never had any kind of relationship with me. What if they have evidence that we knew each other? Jessica's voice became harder, more businesslike. Derek, I need you to understand something. If this situation goes to court, it's going to be your word against mine. I'm a pregnant woman whose marriage fell apart because of an affair. You're a single man who helped create fraudulent business accounts. Who do you think a jury is going to believe, Samay? You're threatening me. I'm offering you a way out. Take the money and disappear, or stay and face criminal charges for fraud, identity theft, and financial elder abuse. Because, Derek, those bank accounts you helped me set up, they're connected to loans taken out in my brother's name and charges made against my husband's credit. When the police investigate, they're going to find your fingerprints, your employment verification, your signatures on every document. Brad and I exchanged glances in the dark parking lot. Jessica was confirming everything we'd suspected. But more than that, she was revealing the cold calculation behind her entire scheme. I never meant for anyone to get hurt, Derek said weakly. Intent doesn't matter. Results matter. And the result is that you're criminally liable for multiple felonies, unless you take my offer and disappear. What about the baby? Jessica laughed, a sound devoid of warmth. The baby is my insurance policy. As long as I'm pregnant and abandoned, I'm a victim. People will feel sorry for me, want to protect me. By the time the baby is born, this whole situation will be resolved and I'll be free to start my new life. New life where... That's not your concern. Just know that I've been planning my exit from this family for a long time. This pregnancy, this crisis, my brother's wedding. It's all part of clearing the way for what comes next. Derek's voice was barely audible. What comes next? Freedom. Derek, real freedom. No more pretending to be the perfect daughter, the perfect sister, the perfect wife. No more competing for attention and resources with people who never appreciated what I was capable of. As Jessica left the restaurant, Brad and I sat in stunned silence. We'd expected to catch her attempting witness tampering, but we'd uncovered something much darker. A systematic plan to destroy her own family as revenge for years of perceived slights and jealousy. Marion. Brad said quietly, "Your sister isn't just a criminal, she's a sociopath." Looking at the recording device that had captured Jessica's confession, I realized that my wedding was the least of my problems. Jessica wasn't just trying to postpone my celebration. She was trying to eliminate me as competition for my parents' love, attention, and financial support. And according to her own words, this was just the beginning. The next morning, I met with a criminal defense attorney named Patricia Chen at her downtown Chicago office. Sarah had insisted on coming with me, and together we presented Derek's evidence and the recorded confession to someone who could help us understand our legal position. Patricia listened to the entire recording twice, taking detailed notes and occasionally asking for clarification about timelines and relationships. When she finished, she leaned back in her leather chair and gave us a grave look. "Marion, you're in serious trouble. Even though you're clearly a victim of identity theft, the scope of the fraud committed in your name could result in federal charges if the prosecutors decide you were involved. But I have proof that Jessica forged my signatures. Proof that she's capable of forgery, yes. But proving that you didn't authorize or participate in these transactions is going to be more complicated. She's established a pattern of behavior that makes it look like you were aware of and benefiting from the fraudulent accounts." Sarah gripped my hand tightly. What kind of charges could Marion face? Identity theft, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit financial fraud. Potentially 15 to 20 years in federal prison if they pursue maximum penalties. The words hit me like a physical blow. But I'm the victim here. That's what we'll argue, but Jessica has been very clever about creating plausible deniability. The recording helps establish her intent, but it doesn't prove that you weren't a willing participant in the earlier phases of the scheme. Patricia pulled out a legal pad and started sketching out our options. The good news is that we have Derek's cooperation and Brad's documentation of the financial damage. The bad news is that Jessica has had months to prepare her defense strategy. What kind of defense strategy? If I were representing her, I'd claim that she was coerced or threatened by someone, probably you, into participating in the fraud. I'd argue that she was a victim of domestic abuse, financial manipulation, or psychological pressure. The pregnancy makes her incredibly sympathetic to a jury. My phone buzzed with a text message from Mom. "Marion, honey, please come home. Jessica is back and she wants to apologize to everyone. She's ready to tell the truth about everything." I showed the message to Patricia, who shook her head immediately. "Don't go. This sounds like she's preparing to control the narrative before you can present your evidence to your parents." But Sarah disagreed. "Maybe we should go. If Jessica confesses to the family, it strengthens our position that she was acting alone." Or, Patricia countered, "She confesses to a version of the truth that makes Marion look culpable while positioning herself as a victim who was manipulated into criminal behavior." Despite the attorney's warnings, I decided we needed to hear what Jessica planned to say. Sarah and I drove to my parents' house that evening, arriving to find Jessica sitting in the living room with Mom and Dad looking remorseful and vulnerable. "Marion, thank God you're here," Mom said, hugging me tightly. "Jessica has something important to tell all of us." Jessica looked up at me with tears in her eyes. "I owe everyone an apology. I've made terrible mistakes and I've hurt people I love." "What kind of mistakes?" Dad asked gently. "The affair with Derek was wrong, but it's not the whole truth. Derek and I weren't just having a romantic relationship. He was helping me with some business ventures that I shouldn't have pursued." My heart sank. She was already twisting the facts. "What kind of business ventures?" Sarah asked. "Derek works in finance and I thought he could help me set up investment accounts to save money for the baby. But I made some poor decisions about using Brad's credit and Marion's financial information without their permission." "You used Marion's information?" Mom asked, looking shocked. Jessica nodded sadly. "I forged some signatures and opened some accounts that I shouldn't have. I told myself it was just temporary, that I'd pay everything back before anyone noticed. But then Brad found out about Derek and everything fell apart." Dad's face was turning red. "Jessica, are you telling us you committed fraud?" "I made mistakes, Daddy. But I was scared and confused, and Derek convinced me that what we were doing was legal. He said lots of family members help each other with business accounts and credit applications. I couldn't stay quiet anymore." "Jessica, that's not what happened. You manipulated Derek into helping you set up accounts so you could launder stolen money." "Marion, please don't make this worse than it already is," Jessica pleaded. "I know you're angry about the wedding situation, but attacking me isn't going to help anyone." "I'm not attacking you. I'm telling the truth." Jessica turned to our parents with fresh tears. "This is why I was afraid to confess everything earlier. I knew Marion would try to make me look like some kind of criminal mastermind instead of someone who made mistakes while trying to secure a future for her baby." Mom put her arm around Jessica protectively. Sweetheart, we'll figure this out together. The important thing is that you're being honest now." "Actually," Jessica continued, "there's something else I need to tell you. Derek has been threatening me." My blood ran cold. "What?" "He said if I don't pay him money to keep quiet about the business accounts, he'll tell the police that everything was my idea. He wants $50,000, or he'll claim that I forced him to commit fraud." The manipulation was so blatant that I wanted to scream, but I could see that my parents were buying every word. "We need to call the police," Dad said firmly. "This Derek character is trying to extort our daughter." "Daddy, I don't want to involve the police yet. I'm hoping we can resolve this quietly, maybe pay Derek something to make him go away so we can focus on fixing the problems in my marriage." Sarah spoke up. "Jessica, you can't pay extortion money to cover up fraud. That just makes you guilty of more crimes." "I'm not trying to cover up anything," Jessica replied. "I'm trying to protect my family from a dangerous man who's threatening to destroy all our lives." Before anyone could respond, my phone rang. The caller ID showed Detective Raymond Walsh from the Chicago Police Department. "Marion Martinez, this is Detective Walsh. We need to speak with you immediately about some financial irregularities that have been reported in connection with your name. My stomach dropped. What kind of irregularities? Sir, I'd prefer to discuss this in person. Can you come to the station tonight? I looked around the room at my family, seeing the fear and confusion in their faces. Detective, am I under arrest? Not at this time, but I'd strongly advise you to bring an attorney. After I hung up, the room erupted into chaos. Mom started crying, Dad began pacing angrily, and Jessica sat quietly with a look of resigned sadness that I now recognized as completely fake. Marion, what is going on? Mom demanded. Before I could answer, Jessica spoke up. This is what Derek threatened would happen. He said he'd report everything to the police and make it look like Marion was the one behind the fraud scheme. That's not what's happening, I said desperately. Derek is helping us expose Jessica's crimes. Marion, please stop, Jessica said softly. I know you're scared, but blaming me isn't going to help your legal situation. We need to work together to prove to the police that Derek manipulated both of us. As I looked at my sister's performance, I realized that she'd played this perfectly. By confessing to mistakes while framing Derek as the real criminal, and me as either a co-conspirator or another victim, she'd positioned herself as the sympathetic figure who needed protection. And tomorrow, I'd have to walk into a police station and try to convince detectives that my pregnant, remorseful sister was actually a master manipulator who'd spent months planning to destroy multiple lives. The worst part was that I could see the doubt in Sarah's eyes, the growing fear that maybe I really had been involved in something criminal that I couldn't remember or admit to. Jessica had found a way to make everyone question everyone else, including themselves. I spent the night at Sarah's apartment, unable to face going home to my own place where Jessica might be waiting. At 3 a.m, I was sitting at Sarah's kitchen table with my laptop, printing out every piece of evidence Derek and Brad had provided, when Sarah emerged from the bedroom in her scrubs. I have to go to work, she said quietly. But Marion, I need to ask you something, and I need you to tell me the absolute truth. Is there any chance, any possibility at all, that you knew about some of these financial transactions? Maybe you agreed to help Jessica with something small, and it got out of hand. The question felt like a knife through my heart. Sarah, you think I'm lying to you. I don't know what to think anymore. Your sister seems genuinely scared your parents believe her story, and now the police want to question you. Maybe there's something you're not remembering, or maybe you got pulled into something that seemed innocent at the time. I stared at the woman I was supposed to marry in 5 days, seeing doubt and fear in her eyes where there used to be trust and love. I never signed those documents. I never authorized those accounts. I never took a penny of stolen money. Sarah nodded, but I could tell she wasn't entirely convinced. I believe you want to tell the truth, Marion, but I'm scared that there's more to this story than you realize. After Sarah left for work, I called Patricia Chen and arranged to meet her at the police station. Detective Walsh turned out to be a tired-looking man in his 50s who'd clearly seen every kind of fraud case Chicago had to offer. Mr. Martinez, thank you for coming in voluntarily. We're investigating reports of identity theft, wire fraud, and conspiracy to commit financial crimes. Your name appears on numerous documents related to these alleged crimes. Patricia immediately took control of the conversation. Detective, my client is a victim of identity theft. We have evidence that his sister forged his signature on multiple financial documents without his knowledge or consent. For the next 3 hours, we presented our case. Derek's evidence, Brad's documentation, the recorded confession. Everything we had that proved Jessica's guilt and my innocence. Detective Walsh listened carefully, taking notes and asking detailed questions. But when we finished, his response wasn't what I'd hoped for. Mr. Martinez, this is certainly compelling evidence that your sister committed fraud. However, it doesn't definitively prove that you weren't involved in planning or executing the scheme. What more do you need? I asked desperately. We'd need evidence that you reported the identity theft immediately upon discovering it, that you took steps to protect yourself financially, that you had no access to or benefit from the fraudulent accounts. Instead, we have a situation where the crimes were committed over several months, and you only came forward after multiple other people reported suspicious activity. Patricia leaned forward. Detective, the recording clearly shows Jessica admitting to a long-term plan to frame other people for her crimes. The recording shows her offering to pay someone to leave town, which could be interpreted multiple ways. She could claim she was trying to protect her family from someone who was blackmailing them. As we left the police station, I felt like my entire life was collapsing. In 3 hours, I was supposed to meet with the wedding caterer for final menu approval. In 5 days, I was supposed to marry Sarah. Instead, I was facing potential federal charges and watching my fiancé lose faith in my innocence. My phone buzzed with a text from Mom. Mary and Jessica collapsed at home. We're at Northwestern Memorial Hospital. Please come immediately. Against Patricia's advice, I rushed to the hospital. I found my parents in the emergency room waiting area, both looking terrified and exhausted. What happened? I asked. Jessica started having severe abdominal pain around noon, Mom explained. She was vomiting blood, saying she couldn't feel the baby moving. The doctors are running tests now. Dad looked up at me with hollow eyes. Son, the stress of this police investigation is killing her. She's barely eaten in 3 days. She hasn't slept. She keeps saying she's responsible for ruining everyone's life. Before I could respond, a doctor in scrubs approached our group. Are you the Martinez family? Yes, Mom said quickly. How is Jessica? Ms. Martinez is stable, but she's experienced what we call a threatened miscarriage. She's approximately 12 weeks pregnant and the fetus is currently viable, but she needs complete bed rest and minimal stress to avoid losing the baby. Mom started crying again. Doctor, she's been under tremendous emotional pressure lately. Her marriage is falling apart. There are legal problems, family conflicts. I understand. The best thing you can do right now is create a calm, supportive environment for her. Any additional stress could result in pregnancy loss. As the doctor walked away, Dad turned to me with an expression I'd never seen before. Pure anger mixed with disappointment. Marion, I don't care what's in those police reports or what evidence you think you have. Your sister is in that hospital bed fighting to save her baby's life because of the stress you've put her under. Dad, I didn't put her under stress. She created this entire situation. She made mistakes, yes, but instead of helping her fix them quietly, you've involved lawyers and police and turned our family crisis into a public scandal. Mom joined in. Marion, honey, please. If you love your sister at all, if you care about this innocent baby, please just drop the charges and let us work this out as a family. I can't drop charges that I never filed. The police are investigating because Brad reported the fraud against him. Then convince Brad to drop it, Dad demanded. Show him that the Martinez family takes care of its own problems. I stared at my parents, realizing that no amount of evidence would convince them that Jessica was anything other than a victim. She'd positioned herself perfectly. The pregnant, abandoned wife whose family turned against her during her darkest hour. While I was wrestling with this realization, my phone rang. Sarah's number appeared on the screen. Marion, I'm sorry to bother you, but something strange just happened. A police officer came to the hospital asking questions about you. What kind of questions? About our relationship, about your financial situation, about whether you've ever asked me for money or seemed stressed about debt. Marion, they're investigating you as a suspect, not a victim. The final pieces of Jessica's plan clicked into place. While I was at the police station presenting evidence of her crimes, she'd been calling Detective Walsh from her hospital bed, providing a tearful account of how her desperate brother had forced her to help him commit fraud to pay for his expensive wedding. The abdominal pain, the threatened miscarriage, the dramatic hospital stay. It was all theater designed to make her look like the victim of my alleged crimes while she was actually completing her betrayal. Sarah, I need you to know that everything I told you is true. I never committed fraud, never stole money, never hurt anyone. There was a long pause before Sarah replied. Marion, I want to believe you, but I can't marry someone who might be going to prison. I can't start a life with someone whose family situation is this toxic and complicated. What are you saying? I'm saying that maybe your parents are right. Maybe we should postpone the wedding until this gets resolved. As I hung up the phone standing in a hospital waiting room while my parents comforted my sociopathic sister, I realized that Jessica had won. She'd successfully destroyed my relationship, my reputation, my financial stability, and my family's trust in me. But looking at the evidence folder in my hands, I made a decision that would change everything. Jessica might have won this battle, but I wasn't going to let her win the war. Instead of going home that night, I drove straight to Brad's apartment. I found him sitting at his kitchen table surrounded by legal documents, looking like a man who'd aged 10 years in 2 weeks. Brad, we're not going to win this fight by playing defense. Jessica has turned my entire family against me, convinced the police I'm a criminal, and nearly destroyed my relationship with Sarah. It's time to go on the offensive. Brad looked up from his paperwork. What do you mean? I mean, we stop trying to prove our innocence and start exposing the full scope of her crimes. We find every victim, every fraudulent account, every stolen dollar, and we present it all to the authorities at once. Marion, she's in the hospital claiming pregnancy complications. If we push too hard now, it's going to look like we're attacking a sick, vulnerable woman. The pregnancy complications are fake, just like everything else about her. I pulled out my phone and called Derek. Derek, I need you to contact every person Jessica asked you to help with business accounts. We need a complete list of every financial institution, every form you signed, every transaction you helped facilitate. Over the next 48 hours, Brad, Derek, and I worked around the clock to compile evidence. What we discovered was staggering in its scope. Jessica hadn't just defrauded Brad and stolen my identity. She'd been running similar schemes on at least 6 other people over the past 18 months. Derek led us to 2 other co-workers who'd helped her set up accounts, both believing they were assisting with legitimate business ventures. Brad's credit report revealed connections to financial institutions in 3 different states. My identity had been used to secure loans from companies I'd never heard of. But the most damning evidence came from Jessica's own digital footprint. Derek had maintained access to one of the email accounts they'd created together, and Jessica had been sloppy about covering her tracks. The email history revealed months of communication with people involved in various fraud schemes, discussions about falsifying documents, and detailed plans for covering up her activities. On Thursday morning, 2 days before my originally scheduled wedding, Patricia Chen and I walked into Detective Walsh's office with 4 boxes of evidence and a presentation that took 3 hours to deliver. Detective, what we've uncovered is not a family dispute about wedding money. This is a sophisticated multi-state fraud operation that has victimized at least 9 people and multiple financial institutions over the past year and a half. We presented bank records showing over $200,000 in fraudulent transactions. We showed email communications proving premeditation and criminal intent. We provided testimony from 5 different victims who'd been manipulated into participating in Jessica's schemes. Most importantly, we presented evidence that Jessica's hospital stay was orchestrated to provide her with an alibi while she continued accessing fraudulent accounts electronically. She's been using the hospital's Wi-Fi to move money between accounts and communicate with co-conspirators. I explained, showing Detective Walsh the digital evidence. Even while claiming pregnancy complications, she's been actively managing her criminal enterprises. Detective Walsh studied the evidence for a long time before speaking. Mr. Martinez, this changes everything. If even half of what you're presenting can be verified, your sister is looking at federal charges that could put her away for 15 to 20 years. What about the charges against me? Based on this evidence, I don't see how any prosecutor could argue that you were anything other than a victim. We'll need you to continue cooperating with the investigation, but I don't anticipate any charges being filed against you. That afternoon, Jessica was arrested in her hospital room on charges of wire fraud, identity theft, conspiracy to commit financial fraud and money laundering. The local news covered the story, describing it as one of the most sophisticated fraud schemes ever perpetrated in the Chicago area by a single individual. My parents called me that evening, their voices hollow with shock and disbelief. Marion, "We owe you an apology," Mom said through tears. "We should have believed you. We should have supported you instead of enabling Jessica's lies." "I don't understand how we missed this," Dad added. "How did our daughter become someone capable of this level of deception and cruelty?" Patricia Chen explained that sociopaths often present as charming and sympathetic, especially to family members who want to believe the best about their loved ones. Jessica had spent years perfecting her ability to manipulate emotions and control narratives. "The important thing now," Patricia told us, "is that the family begins healing from the trauma she inflicted." But the person whose forgiveness mattered most was Sarah. I found her at the hospital during her lunch break, sitting in the cafeteria where she'd comforted so many worried families over the years. "I know you have no reason to trust me after everything that's happened," I began, "but I need you to know that every word I told you was the truth." Sarah looked up at me with tired eyes. "I saw the news report. I know you were innocent of the crimes. But Marion, what scares me is how easily your family turned against you and how quickly I started doubting you." "So what does that mean for us?" "It means we both have work to do. You need to figure out how to set boundaries with your family so that something like this never happens again. And I need to figure out how to be a partner who supports you even when things get complicated and scary." "Does that mean you're willing to work on it with me?" Sarah smiled for the first time in weeks. "It means I love you enough to try. But Marion, we're not getting married this weekend. We're going to take time to rebuild trust and make sure our relationship is strong enough to handle whatever challenges come next." 6 months later, Sarah and I were married in a small ceremony at her family's church in Aurora. Brad served as my best man, having finalized his divorce, and started rebuilding his credit with Jessica's restitution payments. Derek testified against Jessica in exchange for immunity, then moved to Colorado to start fresh with a clean slate. Jessica pleaded guilty to multiple federal charges and was sentenced to 4 years in prison, followed by 5 years of supervised probation. She was required to make full restitution to all victims and participate in psychological counseling programs. My parents began attending therapy to understand how they'd enabled Jessica's behavior for so many years. They slowly rebuilt their relationship with me, learning to set boundaries and recognize manipulation tactics. The baby, a healthy girl named Emma, was born while Jessica was in federal custody. DNA testing confirmed that Derek was the father, but he chose to relinquish parental rights. Emma was placed with a loving adoptive family who sends pictures and updates twice a year. Standing at the altar with Sarah 18 months after our original wedding date, I realized that Jessica's attempt to destroy my life had actually made it stronger. I'd learned to recognize manipulation, set boundaries with toxic people, and choose loyalty to those who truly deserved it. The crisis had revealed who my real family was, not just the people who shared my blood, but the people who supported my happiness and growth, even when it was difficult or inconvenient. As Sarah and I exchanged vows, I thought about the lesson that had emerged from the darkest period of my life. Sometimes the greatest act of love is refusing to enable destructive behavior, even when that behavior comes from people we're supposed to love unconditionally. True family means those who celebrate your success rather than sabotage it, who support your growth rather than demand your sacrifice, and who stand by you when times get tough rather than abandoning you when standing by you becomes inconvenient. Jessica had tried to teach me that family always comes first, no matter what. But what I learned instead was that healthy family relationships are built on mutual respect, honesty, and genuine love, not manipulation, guilt, and conditional loyalty. Today, Sarah and I have been happily married for 3 years. We have a beautiful son named David, and we've built a life surrounded by people who choose to love and support each other every day. My parents have become wonderful grandparents who've learned from their past mistakes. Even Jessica has shown signs of genuine change during her time in prison rehabilitation programs. She writes letters occasionally, taking responsibility for her actions and expressing hope that someday we might rebuild a relationship based on honesty rather than manipulation. Recovery from family trauma is possible, but it requires courage to face the truth. wisdom to set appropriate boundaries, and patience to rebuild trust over time. The most important thing I learned is that you can love someone while still protecting yourself from their destructive behavior. Sometimes the best thing you can do for everyone involved is to refuse to participate in toxic patterns, even when that refusal causes short-term pain and conflict. In the end, choosing to protect my relationship with Sarah and my own integrity wasn't selfish. It was the healthiest choice for everyone in our family, including Jessica herself. Have you ever faced a situation where family loyalty conflicted with your personal values and happiness? How did you navigate the challenge of loving someone while protecting yourself from their destructive behavior? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Your experience might help someone else who's struggling with similar family dynamics. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it reminds you that you deserve relationships built on respect, honesty, and genuine love. Sometimes the hardest battles we fight are the ones that teach us the most about who we really are and what we truly value. Remember to like this video if it resonated with you, subscribe for more real-life stories about overcoming family challenges, and share this with someone who might need to hear that it's okay to set boundaries with people you love. Until next time, take care of yourselves and choose your battles wisely.